Welcome, everybody. My name is Fong. I'm an entrepreneur, business strategist, real estate investor, speaker, and also best-selling author. And every single day, I help others unlock the potentials and guide them to succeed. Today on the show, we have another fascinating guest. We interview some of the biggest celebrities, multimillionaires, business CEOs, athletes, performers, artists to find out their journeys to success, how they overcome challenges and adversity, and of course, their keys to success. And today's guest for sure can add some light to that because he comes highly sought after by others that I had on this show. He has lots of experience in the marketing and advertising space, over 15 plus years experience in that, working with some of the biggest companies out there from Coca-Cola to Nike to Samsung. Something I found very unique is that he guarantees his clients KPIs, consumers that actually want their products, their goods, and services. He specializes in influencers, branded content, social and paid media, and somebody who, when he speaks, people listen to. And I know because I see him speak on stage, very dynamic, very great input, and somebody who's been able to help so many people really succeed in their branded content and also their social media as well. So please welcome owner of Each and Every One Global, investor, speaker, and of course, marketing and advertising extraordinaire, Mr. Abraham Charles.
Cheers, sir. Thank you for the nice introduction. I really appreciate it.
Hey, awesome. Thanks for being here. I know you're all the way across the world from me, so it's always nice to speak to somebody who's like time zones away.
Yeah, no, based in the UK, London, been here all my life. Originally grew up in Leeds, which is north UK, but been in London, central London for about 15, 16 years.
Awesome. Well, normally I start off by asking your journey, but let's hit this right off the bat. Tom Brady, how was that, and how did you come about having that pass being thrown to you?
So it's a part of a closed network called the Investor Network Group, and which was originally known as the Founders. But a compatriot called JT Fox, who introduced me to the group, gave me the opportunity to attend an event to meet some of his clients, but also to meet the Tom Brady himself and a couple of other sports stars, network with them, and then go to a couple of after events to meet business owners and entrepreneurs and see other investors and just basically network the room. So yeah, that happened last year. I ended up speaking to Tom, having about a 5-minute chat with him. Ended up playing a bit of a ball game with about 15 minutes, which was great. And then we all went for drinks and another photograph opportunity in the evening to do a bit more networking. So we ended up meeting up with Gronk, Grigowski, and a few other athletes as well. So yeah, it was great.
Awesome. What was going in your mind right at that moment there?
Do you know what? At that very moment in time, I actually said to him, "Throw it to me as hard as you possibly can." And halfway through actually trying to catch the ball, I thought, "Why did I just say that?" But at the end of the day, you have to keep running your strides. You have to keep making small steps to actually get to the end goal. And that end goal for me was catching that ball without allowing it to drop. But as the picture doesn't showcase, I actually ended up jumping onto the barrier and actually catching the ball at the same time. So the execution was perfect, but yeah, making those small strides to make the big end goal is what it's all about.
Nicely done, coming through and also with style.
Yeah, well, I don't know about the style, but coming through to the end. It doesn't matter how you get there, but as long as you get there in the end. But again, yeah, I think one biggest takeaway that I took away from that event was the fact that he's such a big global star, but he's also human as well. He's got a bit of humility about him, and just embracing and taking the time out to engage with the audience that was there to answer any questions was very, very gracious of him. End of the day, he was also raising money for charity, which is obviously for a good cause. But yeah, from what you can see of the man himself, he dedicates his time. He puts a lot of due diligence into understanding the work ethic that he needs to do on a daily basis to strive to be the best. And well, let's be honest, he is one of the best in global sports, isn't he?
Awesome. Well, share with us your journey. How did you get to who you are today? This marketing and advertising genius, and also a person who's catching balls with Tom Brady. So, what was that journey like?
Well, the journey started 25 years ago when I used to be in a small town called Leeds. Well, I say it's a small town, but I was working in the e-learning industry, providing international British schools with a educational platform, but having the ability to sell the marketing piece into the actual parents of the students that was abroad. Some of the students were maybe living in the UK, while the parents were in Australia, they were in Asia, Hong Kong, China, and it was my job to be able to put out promotional content to other international British schools that didn't have a system in place to actually promote the work ethic that was happening by the actual students, so that the parents could also engage with the work as well and understand how they actually were progressing within their educational journey. And from that point, it taught me how to actually engage with the core demographics of people that wasn't technologically savvy. And the type of nuances and keywords that would resonate with them to bring them into the ecosystem as well. So that was quite key and fundamental in understanding the different segmentations of audiences that I had to speak to with the different messaging. From that point, I went on to work for a technology company called Tribal. Ended up working in Ireland for about 2 years, doing the digital transformations for Trinity College Dublin. Worked for there from going from a paper base into a digital online system and making sure that they were sufficient and the processes were economical and automated. From that point, I got a bit bored of that, to be honest. And then I felt to myself, I wanted to go into the bright lights, work with the big agencies. So I ended up creating an e-commerce, an app that allowed you to fast track your drinks services within the bars, restaurants, and nightclubs. I implemented that into my dad's own ecosystem. He had a couple of bars and restaurants and nightclubs in the UK. So I tested the baseline of the functionality in a couple of the bars, then took it on a global scale and ended up selling it. From that point, I then went down to the UK, London, to work for a couple of the big advertising agencies. Doing, again, digital transformations, but I transferred over to doing larger campaigns and creating above-the-line campaigns as well. Through that process, that was about 4 or 5 years, ended up working on accounts such as Nike, Lipton Iced Tea, Coca-Cola, and so forth, from the likes of Coutts, Banks to RBS to Halifax. And through that journey, I was obviously making great contacts, speaking to big brands, understanding what they wanted to do for their audiences and different segmentations for different territories and how their nuances of conversational aspects resonated with a certain audience of that type. So that took me probably about 5 to 6, 7 years of my journey, bedding myself in the big ad world. Then going from that, I ended up going into a small boutique agencies and solely working on the likes of Nike for a long time on a couple of their European Championship football campaigns, the World Cup campaigns over in Milan, Paris. And at that point, I was understanding a hell of a lot more data. That data aspect came from when I was actually building CMS platforms for the digital agencies and working with the likes of Adobe and so forth, and understood that data is quite key to driving the success of an advertising campaign or a social campaign. And it was in 2016 when I realized that although there's a big spread of driving awareness through the upper funnels of utilizing celebrities from Cristiano Ronaldo to Kim Kardashians to the likes of Tom Brady, whoever it may be. But then the underlying element we had to drive the footfall into bricks and mortar stores. And it was all good and well that we had these big celebrities to drive mass awareness, but who was actually talking to the lower level people at the community level and getting them resonating and understanding the nuance of the product or service? So I took it upon myself to create an Excel spreadsheet and that allowed me to analyze the data of the social profiles of these celebrities, but also influencers at the time of content creators and the people at the low ground in the local communities and how they interact on the social and how they drove engagement and how they created a community and followership within their social community. And all that led to one thing to another, to me then understanding a bit of an algorithm that actually worked to say, look, we need a celebrity who's going to drive the mass awareness, but then we also need another 5 to 20 influencers that's going to drive people through the door. And at that point, I ended up going to work for a brand called Lab Bible, which is a global media publisher. They create a lot of content across Facebook, Instagram, and create viral content. So they probably average around about 40 million views of content every single day on various subjects. And that allowed me then to embed influencers into the content on a regular basis and watch how the audience gravitates to that piece of content and showcase it virally. that mechanism then made me thought, you know what, I'm onto something here. I can then understand if we're to use a celebrity, if we're to use an influencer, if we use a content creator, or if we're to use the man down the road, maybe my next door neighbor, what the output of that campaign and what the results that they should be driving. So if I was to create a creative campaign that wanting to have multiple touch points in omnichannel, so out of home advertisements, digital discrete ads, it may be social content across Facebook, Instagram, long form across YouTube, short form across the likes of Reels and things like that. If I put into this algorithm, it would say I would need to use 3 influencers, one celebrity. One influencer had to be a micro, 2 influencers had to be a nano, and with those at a certain level of followings, the output would be they would drive 10 million impressions. They would drive 7 million views of the content. They would drive 100,000 people to a landing page. But ultimately, we'd understand the conversion rates and the ROI, which we can report back to the actual client before the campaign actually started. So it would give them a lot more confidence. It would give the team a lot more confidence to say, if we go down this strategic directions, we will be able to hit the business KPIs for those clients. But throughout that journey, we had the ability to optimize and tweak the campaign metrics and different levers as well. So yeah, that's a quick synopsis of my path. I know I'm going a bit quickly, but yeah, it gives you a bit of an overview of the journeys that I've been through and what's entailed throughout that journey as well.
Wow, that is incredible. Such a complicated journey, but then also allowing you to really showcase what you can do and what you're able to provide your clients. It's absolutely fascinating. Now, when you're talking about that, you work with some of the biggest companies out there. What are they coming to you with? What are the most common things that they're struggling with? They go, hey, you know what, Charles, Abraham, help us out with this because we're not able to get the results that we want compared to small business or small entrepreneurs.
Yeah, I think with bigger clients, it's a lot easier to drive awareness. They can pull the purse strings and say, look, we're going to go with a big agency. But at the end of the day, everybody struggles to find that authentic connection and identifying the right person who can actually promote your brand or service. So they're looking for somebody to come on board and actually do the deep dive, the dirty work of doing the analysis, the insights, the research, understand the data, understand the metrics, but then also to do the day-to-day management because they've obviously got other things to deal with within their business, which is more strategic and at a higher level. So with the big corporate organizations, they're looking for efficiency, a quick turnaround, but also to make sure that you understand the numbers and understand what their KPIs are and whether or not you can actually perform against those KPIs. With the smaller businesses, they also want their fundamental issues are about getting a return as quickly as possible because they don't have the big massive budgets. It's every dollar, every pound needs to be accounted for. So, and this is why I've gone down the route of providing a guaranteed ROI. And the guaranteed ROI is based over a certain period of time, which allows us to drive awareness, it allows us to drive consideration, and it also allowed us to drive the lower funnel metrics in terms of sales or whatever that may be for that individual business. And at that point, if we don't hit those numbers, we extend the campaign until we do at a cost of ourselves. And at some point, if touch wood, it never happens, by the way, but if at some point we do get to a point, we think to ourselves, actually, what we've analysed is not a true reflection of what the output of the campaigns can be. We'll turn around to the client and say, do you know what? We'll give you your money back. It's at a cost to us. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to hit those KPIs, so we're going to just call it quits. And what you have gained from the campaign so far, the insights we'll provide to you, but moving forward, we're not going to be able to carry on that relationship. So I'd rather be upfront at the beginning so a client understands what they're truly going to get for the return. Because like I said, a small business, they pinch every penny, they need a return, and they're very, very scared. It's all about educating them and making them understand it. If you go down this route, this direction, this is what you're going to get. But if you've got $100, but you want to get £1 million reach, you're not going to achieve that. But what you need to do in incremental small steps is X, Y, Z, and we'll show them that path. And then that path will outline the small incremental steps in terms of what they'll get for their return. And then as they carry on, they'll build and build and build moving forward.
Like, because you mentioned some of those small businesses, their budget is limited. It's hard for them to compete. So how do they compete with the bigger names and the bigger companies out there if they're going after some of the same clientele? Like it's almost impossible for them to go, you know what, I'm going to break this market.
Yeah, no, it is impossible. And it's all for them. It's all about, again, for any brand, it's all about driving a community and being authentic to what resonates with your audience. Authenticity is a key because people can see through you. And this is the reason. This is the part of the educational process. You always have to look at a long-term strategy rather than a short-term win. Majority of the clients, small business clients that come to me, expect to return in the first month or so, and I always turn around and say that's never going to happen. You're going to look for a return within about 6 to 9 months. You have to look on the end goal rather than a short-term win. So build up a consistent funnel as we do. Build up a partnership between, let's say, the influencers that we bring on board. Make sure they're the right people, they're the right fit. They have that authenticity to be aligned with your products and service. You know, as well as I know, everybody else knows that a celebrity nowadays, half the time they're just endorsing a product because they're getting paid for it. But you have to find that individual who actually resonates authentically with that product or service. And once that's married up and aligned, then they can start telling the genuine story of that product or service that they're using that's been integrated into their everyday world. And that story then truly comes through the social content or the channels that they're portraying it on. And yeah, you'll get resonating feedback from the audience. They'll say, look, I do like this about this product. I don't like this about this product. And then you start building a user case around them. And then you then get feedback, which then may help you identify R&D prospects of the actual products, which you can build upon that way. And then, yeah, just create that community and that love for the service that you provide.
Mm-hmm. No, I've seen some of the case studies that your company has gone through. It's award-winning multiple times. Is there one case study that you're the most proud of, where the results are absolutely incredible that you yourself were surprised about?
I would actually go back to saying there is one, and that's a skincare brand, and also a sports brand, which I'm not allowed to name actually, based over in the UK. They're a Premier League football team, and the idea was to actually generate more apparel sales over in the US. So it was basically identifying key product ranges that would fit a new audience segmentation. So we did a lot of insights and research, and we were testing different cohorts of audiences. And the client was determined that it was a certain demographic. And I was like, no, definitely not a certain demographic. You need to try this new audience on this new platform. And again, the client didn't want to put the money into the testing phase, so I took it upon myself to actually do the behind-the-scenes testing using my own cash just to understand if I was right. I just needed to prove it to myself, to be honest. It wasn't for the client's benefit, it was for my own benefit. So I went away and did a bit of a testing strategy on the TikTok platform with lower demographics, utilizing the same messaging. And on behold, we did have the client saw an increase of 3,000% in a small window, and he came to me and says, "What's going on? We've just seen a massive spike. We've just run out of stock." And I was like, "Okay, why? What's happened?" Because yeah, in the last 2 weeks, we've just run out of stock, and I'm having to order some more, and we've seen an increase of the codes that's being generated, and we've not generated them. So I says, "Well, I've done a campaign internally. I tested it on TikTok platforms with a new set of influencers and targeted a new audience, and this is what's happened." And he was like, "Oh, okay, fair enough." Next following month, he's increased the budgets, moved the budgets over to TikTok, and yeah, we've kept the relationship strong ever since. So yeah, there's again, half of the battle is if you understand the data, is key because that fundamentally should tell you what directions to go in. And for me to have the nuance and understanding of previous campaigns that we were running on a certain platform for other brands, I knew that things were working better than other platforms. So it was just me having to give a case study to the client before he actually understood what I was talking about.
Cool. I mean, that guy coming up to you is like, "What's wrong? What's happening? Our stock's gone. What do you do?" "I'm sorry."
Yeah, no, exactly. It's a perfect case study for him to go internally as well and speak to the budget holders and get an increased budgets, but also show to them that what we were suggesting was the right thing to do in terms of diverting the budget from one platform to another as well, and a different audience segmentation.
Now, I know your time is very limited. Just a few more questions here. For somebody who has like very limited budget, is there something that you would say, okay, if have set up a certain percentage for your gross revenue that's directed to marketing advertising with a company like yourself or others to help them with the growth, or is there a step-by-step kind of thing? What's the first thing that they should do?
Again, if let's take a startup for example. At a startup stage, you've got very limited budget. So first of all, you've got multiple platforms across the ecosystem from Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Shorts, Reels across Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat. You've got Be Real. There's so many. You've even got the likes of other platforms which hold their own community. So I would start off utilizing those platforms and doing organic content yourself and putting as much effort into that as possible. Once you start building up a certain amount of followers and you're driving revenue that way or driving revenue through other means, you can then start looking at putting literally probably 2-3%, 5%, 10% of your revenue into your marketing spend. But ultimately, everybody's got a mobile device nowadays, so it's easy to capture yourself content. Video's key. But what you also need to do is understand where your target audience is, where they live, whether it be on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, LinkedIn, maybe. Make sure you're creating content in the right format for those audiences. You've obviously got long form, which is different for the likes of LinkedIn to the likes of long form on YouTube because it's different formats. But you can also take those formats and segment them into like a short form 15-second clip, 30-second clip to a minute, and then put that on different platforms. But then the messaging itself has to resonate with that audience. So you've also got to tailor that piece of content. And when I say content, I mean the copy of that content, whether it be the headline, whether it be the short descriptions, in whatever formats, those have to be tailored to the right audiences as well. So, yeah, being consistent with content, making sure it's going out on a regular basis. I would say nowadays, depending on what platform, but you need to have at least 3 or 4 pieces of content going out every single week. It's very, very key. I class it as free advertising nowadays, but again, it's never free because you have to put your own effort and your own time into creating those contents. But it's better than actually spending £1,000, £2,000, £3,000 at the beginning. Start generating those engagements, that community. And then when you get to a certain stage where you can actually start physically putting money into the ecosystem, you want to start testing the relevant audiences, start incrementally, but you may not get the return that you expect straight away. So if I put £1,000 into an ad creations, I may not see a return until I spend 3,000 because of the algorithm needs to be warmed up and the data needs to come through and it needs to be optimized and things like that. But we talk about this for a long time. You could take your existing client list and shove it into the system to get lookalike profiles and create custom audiences and things like that. But yeah, start off small, start off organic, start off with an iPhone, create content yourself, get that posted. It's as simple as that. That's the way forward.
What's the most common misconception that people think that you do?
The most common misconception is that they're going to get a return straight away. Unfortunately, it's a long game. I've been creating content now for it's been on and off for the last, I would say, 4 or 5 years. And it never resonated with the audience in the first 3 or 4 years. I can tell you that now. But it's only now that it's starting to build up traction. It's not a lot, and also the misconception is that you need to have a huge number of followers on each of these social platforms. That's not true at all. So if you have a small number of followers, but you have high engagement rate, and those high engagement rate turns into valid clients and customers, and you're actually monetizing those customers. That's even better than having 10,000 and you only got a 2% engagement and you're not getting any sales out of it. So yeah, the followerships, buying likes, buying comments don't do. People can see through that because there's going to be no engagement. It's all going to be bot driven and things like that. So be authentic to yourself, stay humble, create content, create on a regular basis, look at the data, be consistent with that. And yeah, make sure that you're interacting and engaging with your audience as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for all that great content there. I got 5 rapid fire questions for you. I know your time is very limited, but we'll get through this very quickly. Stranded on a deserted island, first one food to eat for the rest of your life. No consequence.
Fish.
Hollywood calls and goes, "Hey, Abraham, your journey is amazing. We would like to do a biopic on you. Who would you cast to play you?"
Idris Elba.
Idris Elba shows up at your door and goes, "Hey, buddy, I got casted to play you for your biopic. Let's hang out." And you go, "No problem. I want to show you a great time." What's that night like? What do you take him out to do?
Over a meal, a glass of red wine, and then back home for a house party so that he can DJ.
You're stuck in a car and you're driving for a long period of time, and there's only one song that plays over and over and over on hours on end, what's that one song you don't mind listening to?
Luther Vandross, Dancing with My Father.
Ah, nice. And then finally, give me a number from 1 to 5.
6.
That's not from 1 to 5.
I got you out. 4, my lucky number.
1, 2, 3, 4. So if you had to compare success to a handprint, how's success like a handprint?
If I had to compare success to a handprint, what would my handprint be?
Sure. Nicely done. Thank you very much. Your time is very valuable, and I'm much appreciated your input here. Is there any final words from you?
My final words are just strive for success. Don't be shy. Take that first step into the unknown. Everybody has to start somewhere. We've all done it, and it'll always continue to be that way. So yeah, take that first step in your journey.
And if anybody wants to reach out, what's the best way?
Best way is abraham@eachandeveryone.co, or you can reach me on LinkedIn, Abraham Charles, or you can even get hold of me on Instagram, which is Addy by Abe, which is ADEBYABE. And the business name is Each and Everyone.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much.
Really appreciate your time.
It was great. And for everybody else, make sure you connect with Abraham. His content is amazing, and reach out to him if you have any questions and sought his consultation. So thank you very much again. For everybody else, he is Abraham. My name is Fong Chua. Until next time, today is the day to lock your peak potential. We'll see you later.